Listen, I've kept them waiting for long enough now. They've been waiting in the sidelines for a long time. I'm gonna bring them in. It's our good friend Sophie. How are you doing, Sophie?
Hey, how's it going?
I'm doing good. I'm gonna turn this music down now because we're chatting. That's
cool.
enough. That's enough chill. That's enough Nintendo lo-fi and chill for today. Sure. Folks, lots of you know Sophie, but for those of the people that don't, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, yeah. I'm Thema Sophie. I'm Thema Sophie, like gamer with a they. Here on Twitch and on Twitter. I'm CurioVids. If you want to go to patreon.com/CurioVids and check out the video essays I do, and a bunch of other stuff, because I do video essays, I stream, I am on a couple of tabletop podcasts, Dice Funk and Rolling with Rainbows. Let's see what else, so if you go to patreon.com/CurioVids, that's where you can get early access to all that sorts of stuff, some behind the scenes content. And if you look at my links on Twitter, then you can get my PayPal and send me money for pizza. There you go.
Do it. Fucking
those
do
are the
it.
important links.
Yeah, absolutely. So we had a great conversation last time.
I liked it.
I don't know if I told you, but it really sort of made me feel very good. It's been a long time.
I'm really glad to hear that.
It's been a long time since I've spoken to a left winger or had like a left wing, sort of guest on my stream, generally speaking, who's talking about politics. We've actually come away from it feeling inspired and, hopeful about things.
All right. That's the general outlook I like to take on things.
Yeah. So, we had a lot of good conversations last time. We were speaking about, trans rights, trans liberation, the Matrix video that you did, and, your content in general. And we're getting into something a bit deeper this time. We're getting into something really interesting, actually, from my point of view. Do you want to tell everyone what it is?
Sure. Well, yeah, like you were talking about what we could talk about last time, and you suggested a few topics, and I was like, it's okay. Like, I'll come back on if you want me back on, and we can dive into stuff with a bit more depth. And one of those topics you suggested was ecofascism, yes. And I said, well, actually, I did the Reddit guy on you. I went, well, actually.
You sounded like Sean then.
The actual topic to discuss is green neo-imperialism and ecofascism.
Yeah.
Which I wrote a thread about on Twitter the other day, and I've been tentatively researching kind of for my own interests, but like also some potential video topics.
Yeah.
A while ago, I was thinking it would be good to be able to identify ecofascism as as an identifiable thing online. But then I figured, actually, I kind of shelved that script because it was like, well, if you can identify a fascist generally, ecofascism is just the popular like trend that they're all going to be going into.
Yep.
Shortly.
Yep.
As the climate crisis gets worse and worse. And I started thinking, well, actually, the thing that we're really missing discussion of, because this is, so to divert slightly, this is a little bit of the problem that we've had in our sphere of the online left since its beginning, is that we have a very anti-fascist focus, which is good, but the way that works is like, if you imagine, fascists showing up and that being like a sort of viral invasion, then us coming in to be like, we have to de-radicalize these gamers, stop them from being, Nazis. Then that's like our autoimmune response. And
yes.
what we're then doing is trying to push back to get things back to how they were. And that's not enough, is it?
No.
Right? This is a broad problem that we face, is that we've been doing a lot of work to turn fascists back into like politically uninvested liberals. We're trying to get them to go back to brunch, right? That's the protest sign. And so that's going to be a problem if our only analysis of climate politics and the politics that are defined by climate change is about fascists.
Yes.
Then all we're going to be trying to do is tell people not to be eco-fascists, basically. And that honestly, I think, ignores about 90% of the problem, if not more.
Yes. And so when I hear the term eco-fascist, what immediately comes to my mind is, people who say things like, oh, humans are the virus anyway. Just let them die. Do you know what I mean? But, obviously, it has notes of fascism there because obviously most of the victims of climate change are going to be black and brown people towards, the center of the earth kind of thing.
All right, so I sent you a few screen caps of memes that I collected in my researching for my prospective how to identify eco-fascists.
Yes, let's take a look.
Script. So there's a few of them, bit of a content warning for just how fascists think. There's some transphobia in there. There's a little bit of ableism. It's a nice mix.
It's basically generic fascist shit. So shall I just start out with this Bugman fantasy pack one?
That's fab. Yeah, absolutely.
Let's check that out.
So this is one thing that, like, I think that people who are in a super leftist space and are not keeping up, are not doing and fair enough, are not doing the like horrific emotional labor of keeping up with what fascists think.
Yeah.
They might not have seen anyone call anyone a bug man before.
Yeah.
Now I have seen this, and I was really confused by it. Like, what the fuck is a bug man? And then I just accepted it as like, that's just another thing they say now. And I assumed it was like kind of like the way I might call someone a worm or something, right?
Yeah.
I thought it was like, they're like an insect.
Yeah.
But then I came around in my eco-fascism research and I realized that a bug man is someone who promotes eating bugs.
Yeah. So, and obviously for those of you that may not be aware, there was like a tiny I don't know, would you call it a tiny conversation? I'd call it a small conversation about like eating bugs, eating cicadas. It wasn't it? In an effort to combat climate change.
This will foreshadow the discussion we're about to have, right?
Yeah.
But regularly in the neoliberal centric, like mainstream media sphere, really regularly, every few months, someone runs an article that suggests that in the future, to get enough protein, we will have to eat bugs.
Yeah.
And they do this super regularly. And again, this is foreshadowing where we're going to go because we actually need to look at the system as it currently exists.
Yeah.
But the fascists' response to this is they're trying to trick you into eating bugs. And what's kind of interesting about that is that they... again, to get onto what we're going to get to, but like, they're kind of right. Like, like in a sense, like painting a picture of the future where we have to eat bugs to have the protein we need is like, well, Elon Musk isn't going to do that. He's going to carry on having steaks. Like, you can bet your fucking life on it.
For sure.
So even if it comes down to him having to keep his own ranch, which I'm sure he owns a ranch, right? to slaughter his own cows to get his own steaks from his own cows on his own ranch, he will do it, right? And so suggestions of like having to have bug-based foods to get enough protein, even besides the fact that people have lived on vegetarian and vegan diets for thousands of years and not died of lack of protein, even just putting that aside, right?
Yeah.
That is a suggestion for you, the plebs. It's not for Elon Musk, Bill Gates, Hasan. No, I'm kidding.
But I thought Hasan was the literal bourgeoisie. Go on, yeah.
Well, so basically, it's become the new soy boy, right? It's the new cuck. It's right. So the people who go along with the idea of the of eating bugs, they are the cucked soy boys. You can see a few references to that here. In fact, you've got the guy who's doing the soy face.
Yeah,
he loves Star Wars. He's bought an e-thoughts snot. I guess that is what that is.
That's what he says.
He loves weed, which like. Space.
That makes you gay now.
Yeah, and he has an obligatory Nintendo Switch. And what's funny about that part of the meme is that obligatory Nintendo Switch, because every single version of the soy boy that they ever make is going to have a Nintendo Switch because of the poly guy who posted about his Metamore buying him a Nintendo Switch.
Hang on a minute. What the fuck are you talking about?
I'm sorry, I've gone too deep. I've gone too deep with my. I've tipped my hand that I've been researching these guys for too long.
This is intense.
So backtrack a little bit. There was a guy who was poly who posted that his wife's boyfriend bought him a Nintendo Switch.
Oh, so
and he was excited about this, and he did the soy face holding his Nintendo Switch.
Right.
And they all seized on this, like, look, he's the definition of a cuck, and the richer guy is buying him a present, and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And it's like, the guy probably is literally fucking bi. Like, you don't need to like insinuate around the idea that he takes it up the ass. Like, he probably does, and good for him because it's fun. And
I've heard,
from friends. And so, like, the Nintendo Switch becomes this reference to that in fascist semiotics, right? The Nintendo Switch becomes a reference to that. And so I find it kind of funny that they've said in the meme, obligatory Nintendo Switch, when it's literally like, it's, I don't know, it's something funny about the way that that's just nakedly just like a reference.
Yeah, and it's ridiculous because, 90% of the time, people with a Nintendo Switch are fascists.
True. Yeah. Pokemon fans, for example. Anyway, so and then you've also got your pod living, right? This is the other half of the thing. The one thing you do is eat bugs. The other thing you do is live in a pod. They've called it Soyim pod, which is a subtle reference to the idea that the people who are not going to live in pods will be Jewish, because it's goyim and it's soyim pod, right? We've decoded everything going on in this meme.
And also that, you've got the standard aphobia there as well. Day-to-day fleshlight delivery.
Right.
Insinuating that never getting laid is bad and,
Absolutely.
that kind of thing.
It's a very, very toxic...
This has got everything in it.
It's truly everything. Yeah, they're really just defining every... Well, this is why this was in my research, because they're just defining everything they don't like about the people they imagine, the guy in their head. Yeah. the guy who lives in their head.
The created enemy, yeah.
Right, exactly. And it's all the same stuff as usual. Only now it's got a particularly environmental bent. So what else have we got?
Let's take a look. So go on.
Yeah. Next one down. So what have we got? We got a Wojak.
Yeah.
He's saying, I'm not going to eat bugs. I'm not going to drink shit. Fuck you.
Yeah.
And he's crying, and you eat bugs, they eat steak is literally the thing. And the iFunny logo, I think that's a funny touch. I'm not like, I'll just be like utterly sincere here. Whoever fascist made that meme added the iFunny logo as a joke, and that's a funny joke.
Yeah.
That's okay.
That's the funniest bit about it.
Right. Then you've got pink-haired SJW GF telling people to live in pod, eat bugs. Chadman is like, no. And then it's a joke about how if they find ways to appeal to manly men, such as it being like a pirate, then they'll be into it.
What?
You see, so it's like, your quarters be below decks with the rest of the crew. There only be hard tack for rations. Aye, aye, captain. Like, it's a joke about the idea that, like, and as well, I'm using quotes. Really, it's triple parentheses.
Yeah.
They are going to trick you by making it seem fun. And that's how you start becoming a cuck.
I just really, sorry, just... Is this real? Is this like they're like, yeah, all right.
These are all organic.
No, I believe
wild grown. I just found in the wilds of the internet.
I just can't believe that they're trying to say that, like, like Chads love it when things are pirates. Do you know what I mean? They love it. Like that's
right. Like it's just it's all just memes. So it's like you're always going to keep on encountering things that are just like a kind of funny premise, or like a funny like elevation on the thing. And what's interesting to study is the assumptions that they're making to get to that stage.
Yeah.
Let's not eat bugs. Great, I'll build nuclear power plants. And then there's Greta, and she is upset about it.
Yeah.
Next up, we've got a Stone Toss comic.
Yeah, Stone Toss. This. Okay, so fucking hell. This looks like this is where it's come from.
Well, no, He's
No.
just following. I mean,
Oh,
like,
okay, all right, yeah. I'm giving him
well,
too
we'll
much
get
credit.
to that as well in a second. Yeah,
Sure.
like, so yeah. So this is an anti-circumcision comic. Anti-circumcision is just like gym culture, surf culture, gamer culture, and not masturbating are key recruitment techniques for fascists.
Yeah.
So anti-circumcision, right? There's an obvious like anti-Semitic trend they can take it in if they want to. But there's also just like, it's a thing that people feel pretty, I don't know, they feel pretty strongly about.
Yeah.
And so getting people talking about it is a way that they get people to come into this space, and then they're like, you know, who's doing it is them.
Yes.
Right. Anyway, so this is an anti-circumcision comic, and the point is that eating bugs, drinking soy, live in a pod, you being a canny eco-fascist will see what they are trying to do to you.
Yeah.
And you will say, not for me.
Although he does look tentative about circumcising the child.
That's exactly it. So the point Stone Toss is trying to make is, you would say no to eating bugs, drinking soy, and living in a pod. So why are you circumcising your child? That's
yeah.
And then the last one, just to get to the end of my research here.
Yeah, let's have a look.
Is, I don't know, this guy is some gamer.
Yeah,
I'm sure some people might know this guy, but
it's like I need a shower.
Well, yeah, sure. Looks like it probably stinks. Anyway, so Humanity 2050: eat bugs, cut off your dick, live in a shipping container, meet your next door neighbor. Most of the studies I've read seem to say this is the optimal way to live, buddy. And he's just like a happy little scamp, and he's just really excited about the possibility of living in a shipping container and eating bugs.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all that to say, there's plenty going on here to kind of establish our grounds that eco-fascism is a current movement of fascism. It's not a coming movement of fascism. We talk about it a little bit too much as if it's something that's on the horizon. Oh, buddy, it's here.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Right.
So it seems that now, instead of this, I guess it's going to be linked in. I guess it's going to be linked into the, the already established ideas of ecofascism, like what I said before, what I know of it, which is like, just let, poor countries die, that, mainly victims of colonialism and stuff like that. Fuck them.
Yeah. I mean, if we're going to define ecofascism, so one new thing to bring up is the Camp of Saints. Yeah. And so this is a French book, which is beloved by fascists. Now, some of you may have heard of the Turner Diaries. Mildred Thoughtslime did a fantastic video about that. This is probably an equally beloved book, maybe a little less, but like very prominent book in fascist circles. Stephen Miller, for example, has called this his favorite book before.
Right. Okay.
This book is the not exactly origin, but it's like one of the kind of it's the most like a fascist wrote it, and it's by fascists for fascists, depicting what the Great Replacement would look like.
Right. Okay.
So you can see on the cover, literally, like it's just this horde of brown people. I think in the book they come from India, I think. Their leader is a guy called Turd Eater, because like that's how racist the book is. It's just like doesn't even try to pretend. I mean, in much the same way that like in the Turner Diaries, the cucked liberal America they live in has just like basically like legalized sexual assault as long as it's by people of color, like shit like this, where it's just like they're not even trying to pretend not to be extremely racist in this. But this is one that's informed the thought of the what's he called, Renaud Camus, the guy who is the popularizer of the Great Replacement theory.
Right.
Like it ties in with that guy, right? Both French, sus by definition, right? And
true.
So I'm bringing this up because the plot of this book is that the plot of this book is to do with like the third world nations getting overpopulated, and so send loads of immigrants, and then because they breed so much faster than white people is the logic of the book.
Yeah.
Then all the white people are gone within one generation. It's the Great Replacement.
Yeah.
But it's worth noting, right, that as it has been since time immemorial, border control is a key concern of fascists. Right? And so
without borders,
if we're to define absolutely, because borders kill by definition, and by design, and the fascists' main grievance is that they don't have the state monopoly on violence. Seizing the state monopoly on violence is to a fascist what seizing a means of production is to us. And this is why they're always crying about cops not liking them, because they think that cops should like them. Yes. And they're genuinely baffled and upset, and often literally cry when cops arrest them, fight back against them at protests, anything like this. Border control. So border control is a central part of, has always been a central part of fascism and fascist thought. And in the online age, the borders of a specific country aren't as much as it is the West. That's why we have this really nebulous idea of just the West, and it ties in neatly with white supremacy and all this shit. So the important thing to understand is that, and I'm sure you understand, you've said I know you understand this. The important thing that I'm sure the chat, the viewers all understand is that the climate crisis will, by definition, be an immigration crisis. Yeah. It will necessarily be a crisis of immigrants and climate refugees. It's going to be a really a central focus, because not only will the effects of climate change hit, but just geographically happen to hit a lot of the global South way harder, but also because those countries don't have the money to then adapt and tackle climate change, it will hit them harder in that sense too. And so that's all to say that it's not a huge leap at all to go from this book, shit like this, to thinking about the people who will be displaced by climate change and fear-mongering about them, right? Yeah. In fact, you can actually just recycle the same old shit. You can just go, it's the Great Replacement again, but it's caused by climate change. You can use your same old conspiracy theories.
Absolutely. Well, it's conveniently, it seems to me that they've been, spinning that narrative for a long time anyway. I think, because you do always hear about because the triple parentheses, as in the dog whistle that it's the Jews, has always been globalists in it. And when you hear about these sort of ideas about climate change and how it's bad, 9 times out of 10, if you're seeing right-wingers, fascists talk about it, they will say this is a globalist agenda to, I don't know what, generally speaking, they'll say something destroy white people or make you afraid, or it's fear-mongering and stuff. So already they've done the work to manufacture consent amongst their audience that this is something that can easily tie into the Great Replacement theory.
Globalist is the number 2 and anti-Semitic dog whistle after Zionist. It's it's just literally it's their next favorite thing. Right. And a note on that it comes from my researching into conspiracy theories, because for those who don't already know this, and it might be a weird thing to consider, conspiracy theory logic is inherently reactionary as hell, and often just easily tips over the balance into being actually fascist. I did a stream about that with Jess. We read some studies to do with conspiracy logic. It's very true, and it's a thing I've been researching for a while since then. Conspiracy theories often focus on the idea of a new world order, right?
Yes, that's right.
So part of the logic here is it's a little like what communists are advocating for a stateless, borderless, classless society, which by definition would be a world society. Only it's this perversion of it where it's like there will be a dictatorial government at the top controlling the whole world, and then you can see how this plugs into anti-Semitism very easily. And so all very cool and good so far. Very
very nice.
Love that.
Yeah.
But I was going to say that it's important to understand that that logic, that conspiratorial logic that fascists have, because it gives you a clue into what their whole deal is. And their whole deal is that they are the... Okay, so I don't entirely like the Karen meme. As we all know, it's a little bit of a misogynistic thing, but they are the Karens of politics.
Yeah, for sure.
They absolutely exist in this very privileged position. As it's been observed multiple times, fascism is a movement of the petty bourgeois. For those who aren't up with their Marxist terms, that's small business owners, essentially. People who their relationship to the means of production is that they own it for themselves and they control their own work, but they aren't necessarily wealthy. So this is the petty bourgeois encompasses everyone from like your like a newsagent's, right? Someone who just like a family-owned newsagents to the guy who will be on like fucking PMQs or like what is it, Question Time, and being like, I'm working class, even though he earns like he's like, I own 7 rental properties and a jet ski and shit like that, and he's like, I'm working class, and it's like, no, you're fucking not.
No.
That's the petty bourgeois, and that is very, very much where fascism as a movement exists materially across class lines. And which again you can see, I'm trying not to do too many tangents here, but I just want to also
no, it's important. It's important.
Which you can also see that when people tried to say that the people on January 6th were working class, and it was like, no, actually they flew there in private planes, and that's because they are business owners. They are the petty bourgeois. They're not necessarily part of the political establishment, but they have a very comfortable relationship to it. And so when things get bad one way or another, usually a recession is the starts of things. They come out of the woodwork being like, things are uncomfortable for us now. I must speak to the manager. And that's why I say their biggest grievance is that the state monopoly on violence is not on their side. They are deeply, deeply offended, really fucked up by the fact that the cops are not helping them.
Also very similar, again, and I think you mentioned this last time when I brought it up, to anti-vaxxers, anti-maskers.
Yes, and that's what, and that's the thing where like anti-vaxxers, anti-maskers, TERFs, right? All absurdly toxic and conspiratorial spaces. And full of fascists, and that's for a reason, because their logics are identical. And society is this big shaking jug of pebbles, and the people whose logic fits together with another kind of logic, sooner or later they shake together, and then they bump nicely, and they're going to stick together, and that's fascists with these kind of conspiratorial spaces. Conspiracy logic is really, really bigoted, really reactionary, and so they find their way there sooner or later. Sorry.
No, don't worry. I actually led you on that tangent. Don't worry about that.
All right. So, that thing about the anti-vax thing, we could look at that potentially, but like not right this second. Anyway, so that to say, fascists exist in a place materially where they are comfortable, so they like the system that exists. They take a lot of the assumptions that the system gives us for granted. And this is something that will always be true of all kinds of fascism forever. Like, that is just a definitional, like, they take a whole bunch of it for granted. They just think that they should be the ones who are in charge. Right.
That is it, basically.
So we've got fascism broadly.
Fascism is covered now. Like, if anyone doesn't understand fascism now in the chat, I'm sorry, man. They're saying that we've done all we can. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. So you've got fascism down. That's what fascism is all about. And if we're thinking about eco-fascism, what are the assumptions that fascists take from the system and take for granted? So, and also, what do they push back on?
Yeah.
If we look at these memes again, I mean, we don't have to literally look at them again, but the gist that we should have gotten from there is about personal comfort.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Yeah.
The biggest gist of the whole thing is like, my personal comfort is at risk. People are trying to make me eat bugs, live in a pod, and that's unacceptable.
By the way, sorry again, but where the fuck does the pod thing come from? Who's saying that we live in pods? What is that?
So, yeah, okay. So similarly to the mainstream media running like insect protein stories every few months, as the natural processes of capitalism do what capitalism does to cities, and living spaces get smaller and smaller, every few months, similarly, and it's also just an ongoing trend at the same time, media outlets will run something saying that micro homes are the wave of the future. Living in a really tiny small space is the wave of the future, and it's what everyone will love to do because it's a minimalist lifestyle and shit like this. And it's obviously gibberish, and just like the bugs thing, it's obviously for thee, not for me.
And designed to say like, right, you know, your way of life is going to change under this new globalist order, basically.
Right, exactly. Which, or to be clear about the new globalist order, like that's the way that fascists interpret it.
Yes.
And so it's like this weird thing where fascists are always correctly identifying propaganda from the ruling class, correctly identifying that it's targeted at everyone except the established ruling class, and then they are pushing back on it in just exactly the wrong way because they take a lot of other shit for granted.
Yes.
So there is an underlying assumption in the propaganda of go eat bugs articles and live in a pod articles, right?
Yeah.
Which is that there's not enough for everyone. It's a scarcity mindset, and that's the fundamental, just most fundamental assumption that capitalism, neoliberal capitalism, is feeding us all the time, constantly. There's not enough for everyone. Whereas actually, you know, the hyper concentration of urban spaces is because of how capitalism organizes labor. It's not because like everyone wants to live in a city.
No, yeah,
you know,
you're right.
Yeah. For example,
totally fucking get that.
Yeah, exactly. So, as I said, they're taking some stuff for granted at the same time that they're trying to push back on other stuff. And the stuff they take for granted is the shit that's just fundamental to the system. And the stuff they push back on has to do with their own personal comfort.
Yes.
That's it. That's fascists for you, right? So it's kind of so this starts to lead toward my point. It's the underlying system in the first place that makes up, you know, most of the worldview of an eco-fascist or any kind of fascist, and actually makes up some of the most dangerous parts of it. And if that's not enough of a way to understand the danger of eco-fascists, the danger of the underlying system is the fact that it fuels fascist thought. It's that, well, it's not eco-fascists who actually got us to this situation.
No, for sure.
Right?
They're like a symptom, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, the climate devastation that's going on in the global south right now, right? Take, for example, the acceleration of climate change because of deforestation in Brazil and in Geez, what's the country? I think it's Chile.
Yeah.
One sec. I just want to make sure I'm not talking out my ass.
Sure.
Point being,
basically large swathes of the Amazon are on
Bolivia
fire.
is what I'm thinking
Bolivia,
of. Yeah.
yeah.
But in South America is the point, and yeah, Bolivia. So in Bolivia, Janine Áñez was recently, pushed out, elected out. But she came in through a coup against Evo Morales, right?
Yeah.
And hello, that's a hell of an illustration. Yeah, it sure is, isn't it?
Sure.
It's quite something.
Site for, it's a site.
Yeah, it is a site.
I'm just going to go back to Le Camp de San instead.
Right,
It's bad, but it's not as bad, I guess.
Right, for sure. So this one should be, this one's a real shocking twist, but that South American country who had a socialist leader who then had a coup and replaced him with a fucking Christo-fascist, that wasn't just from within the country, right? That was very... Right.
Very
like
obviously
that was
a coup.
Right. Yeah. Very obviously something that was helped along by US foreign policy and by the CIA.
Yeah.
And what Janine Áñez, was effectively installed in government, therefore, it's like Evo Morales, actually, I think I can bring this up.
Yeah.
Evo Morales, when he was inaugurated, gave this fantastic speech. I don't know if I'll be able to find it now, but basically, he was pointing out, he was the first indigenous president of Bolivia.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Right? And he made this speech that was about indigenous politics and the reclamation of their land and decolonization. And it was a fantastic speech. So it doesn't matter so much if I can find it right now, but I would encourage other people to check it out because it's a really cool speech. And that was in 2014 before he then got couped.
Yeah.
And, what does the coup have to do with his politics? Well, he, as the first indigenous president of Bolivia, was trying to fucking protect Bolivia's environment, protect the land, protect it from fucking ridiculous, foreign mining interests, protect it from deforestation, protect it from all this stuff, at the same time as trying to protect indigenous people themselves and their culture. Like, he wanted to protect the land, which, fair fucking enough.
Right, yeah. Sounds
not just
good.
because of the effect on the planet as a whole, but as a specifically indigenous issue. And yeah, that won't do, right?
No.
This is the thing. This is the thing that
neoliberal won't allow that. Politics
yeah,
won't
neoliberal
allow that.
capitalism.
Yeah.
Right. So neoliberalism, even in the first place, this is I think the reason I was thinking of Chile. In the very first place, neoliberalism, started out with a series of fucking coups around the world where Reagan and Thatcher were helping to install these fucking dictators.
Yeah.
And particularly where those countries had elected their own socialist representation. People don't, I think, remember this as much in the legacy of Nelson Mandela, but Mandela was a communist and did have an entire book of reforms that he was popularly elected on, that he was planning to enact, that was going to not just protect the economy and the environment and so on of South Africa, but was going to nationalize loads of its natural resources, give a bunch of land back to people it had been fucking stolen from, and shit like this. But the most vital thing when we're talking about neoliberalism is that he was planning to keep those industries and markets within the country and keep them to the people who they fucking who actually live there.
Yeah, right.
Right. like if someone has absolutely no concept of this, right? The simplest possible way you can understand this is, right, if there is iron in Yorkshire, Britain will make money off it.
Yeah.
If there is copper in South Africa, Britain will make money off it.
Yeah. Well, it's like I was watching a documentary this weekend by Vox,
Right.
on the oil industry. And they would one of the things that I've always really sort of been interested in is the Iranian cultural revolution. And that surprisingly comes from my love of terrible movies, because the guy who directed Samurai Cop is from Iran, and he moved to America after, I think it was Hezbollah was the coup in Iran that was funded by the CIA. And again, you know, Iran, the Middle East, full of fucking oil fields. You know what I mean? It's just one of those things again. And this shit just happens so fucking regularly, and it's happened like all over. In fact, British Petroleum were responsible for it in Nigeria as well. Nigeria had like a bunch of, well, it was a colonial, you know, it was a colonial state at one point, and then they sort of had this revolution again. And then Britain was like, hang on a minute, no, can't be having this. We've got to, you know what I mean? We've got to make sure that that we get the profits from the oil that, you know, that we installed this infrastructure in.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. So it's absolutely mad. This happens all the time. But anyway, yeah, sorry to digress.
No, that's good. That's absolutely in line with what I'm talking about. Someone in chat there says BP is evil and so is Shell. In Nigeria, in the Congo, in other places in Africa where BP and Shell operate, doing mining, doing drilling for oil, their employees, I know this sort of through a friend kind of thing, their employees live on compounds because like there is such a nascent like fury by the local people that like there are just frequent terror attacks like against the oil companies because they're so fucking hated. And so they have to live on like private compounds to do what they do.
The whole fucking Niger Delta is absolutely fucked from the oil extraction and like so many oil spills and stuff like that, because it was badly managed, badly sort of you know, restricted in what it could and couldn't do environmentally wise. They've fucking ruined the country. It's horrific what BP did. And again, this is like, it's the result of neoliberal capitalism, you know what I mean? And it's funny because, you know, these people stoke up fascists and shit like that. And the whole time, you know, we're fighting with fascists.
Right.
You know, and it's sadly, it's not a waste of time because we have to, but it is wasting our time in actually getting to the real crux of the matter, which is, you know, the system.
Yeah. This is exactly it. You're hitting the nail exactly on the head.
Oh, good.
So,
that's good to know.
Well, this is exactly where we're getting to, is the point that in the future, we will be being forced to pick between a green imperialism candidate and an eco-fascist candidate. And it's not that the eco-fascist candidate isn't bad. In fact, it's literally the fact that they are fucking awful and will kill loads of people is the reason that the system wants them to be running against the option that they want you to pick.
Yes.
They want you to have to choose, you know. I was saying this, I think, last time, right? If 2024 rolls around, or 2028, whatever, and we're looking at like Dan Crenshaw and Chelsea Clinton.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. It's going to be like Dan Crenshaw. The environment is bad because we let gay marriage and interracial marriage and transgenderism run amok. And Chelsea Clinton will be like, we need to lead the global economy in tackling climate change.
Yeah.
And people will be like, that's boring and I don't really understand what that means.
Mm-hmm.
But it sounds fair enough. And I'm scared of that guy.
Yeah.
Right. So they pick Chelsea Clinton.
Yeah.
And then like the US government does everything that it can when the fascist movement that it's grown gets the better of it and actually votes in the fascists, you know, does everything it can to stall and stop any kind of progress because it doesn't actually want the country to collapse into civil war. Mm-hmm. Right. And so the fascists end up being really incompetent but very scary. Yeah. And then when the liberals are in, they're doing the really fucking frightening shit because they're really good at their jobs and the whole government works with them.
Correct.
Yeah.
They're basically essentially running the whole fucking show, and it's that same shit. It's the manufactured consent machine again, in terms of like, just forcing you to pick the, South Park is shit, but turd sandwich and giant douche, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Right, where did we get up to? So
we were
Chile.
talking about Chile,
Right. So Chile, they did a coup against Salvador Allende and his socialist government, who had been democratically elected by the people, and replaced him with a horrifying dictator who tortured people in ways that don't bear describing. They are so horrible because the ideology of neoliberalism is inseparable from the ideology of imperialism.
Yeah.
So this is the thing that we need to understand, right? I talked about this a little bit in my cyberpunk video, right? Japan in the 80s and 90s was like practicing capitalism, but it was practicing some degree of state capitalism. It had these huge businesses, which was manufacturers and import-export laborers, and they owned banks as well, the Zaibatsu, the Big Five, right? Yeah. And they worked very happily in cooperation with the state. And that's not a way that America can make money. No. So that's the thing, right? If you want to define neoliberalism, right, that kind of monopoly capitalism should be able to exist in it if our only definition of neoliberalism is to do with free markets.
Yes.
Correct, right? Yeah. Japan had plenty of free market capitalism going on. China does now, right? But the reason that America got so fucking het up and the whole of American media got so fucking het up about Japan in 80s, 90s, the whole reason that they're so fucking het up about China right now is that those markets aren't open to specifically America.
Yeah.
It's a nationalist issue. It's an imperialist issue. It's about American nationalism and about American imperialism and about America ruling the world through trade. It's not about the right or wrong kind of capitalism. This kind of ideological stuff, it's always a post hoc rationalization.
Yeah.
America can just see that someone else is playing with their own toys and thinks that it's morally wrong for them to not get to play with those toys too.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Right. So now we get around to green neo-imperialism, right? The obvious, seriously fucking obvious 5 seconds of thought wave of the future is more imperialism justified through the language of fighting climate change.
Yeah.
So Jess and I did a stream. I gave you a link to it.
Mm-hmm.
Folks don't have to watch it. It's 5 hours long. I'll summarize what I can here.
Quick, go watch it now.
You're right. Yeah, just pause this.
Pause this stream.
Right. But we read Bill Gates's book.
Yeah.
How to Avoid a Climate Catastrophe.
Mm-hmm.
What a fucking unbelievable farce that book was.
Yeah.
We were screaming. We were yelling. We were crying. It's a ridiculous fucking book, right?
Yeah. All I know about Bill Gates' sort of climate change thing is that he funds, is it Kyrgyzstan, the YouTube channel? The Bill Gates Foundation?
Kurzgesagt, yeah.
Is that how you say it? Kurzgesagt. Right, so Kurzgesagt did this video on how, we need to, really think about the population. Can the Earth sustain, this population and shit? And it's that is just eco-fascism, straight away. And that's...
Well, let's loop around on YouTubers, because that's going to be a fucking interesting one to talk about. But it's not just Kurzgesagt. It's actually also fucking Veritasium, Hank Green. It's loads of them.
Yeah.
It's loads of them. So, Bill Gates has a plan to save the world. And by the world, he means capitalism, and it's not entirely clear whether he knows he means that.
Right. Sure. Yeah. He's deep in the source.
Right. Who knows whether Bill Gates fucking realizes the ideological and material role that he has to play in the world. Billionaires are fucking dumb as shit.
Yeah.
Let's just be real about it.
For real.
A certain level of money makes you fucking dumb as hell.
Well, the whole concept of it is not very involved, is it? It's like, what I do with this large chunk of money that I have somehow acquired is I, pay some people a little bit to make me a lot of money. It's this very simple maths, in it. So not surprising.
So the book starts out by saying that under the pandemic, we've actually seen like fantastic progress on climate change, and all the things that we need to be doing in order to fight climate change are being done in this year because the economy slowed, and everyone's thinking, what's a kind of economy that could be sustainable rather than demanding infinite growth? A different kind of economy than the infinite growth one, a different one to the kind we have now, that instead can just stand still and just feed the people it already has and not try to expand forever. There must be a name for that, some kind of community focus, something that's to do with the social instead of to do with capital. No, it's not coming to me. Anyway, so he says that right in like second sentence of the entire fucking book. I'm just like screaming from page 1. But he goes on to say that, obviously that's not sustainable, and he's not a politics guy, so he can't suggest solutions that are political. Now that's a funny one, right? Because that will come up, that'll be like,
I was going to say, because he owns a lot of capital, which is inherently influential.
That's what I mean when I'm like, that's what I mean when I say like, it's unclear how much of a fucking dumbass Bill Gates is. That's it. Like he's either criminally stupid with the amount of money he has. Like you should want to fucking try him for crimes against humanity because he has that much money and he's not and he has no clue what the fuck. Or he's incredibly insidious. And I honestly lean towards that one. But, Bill can pick. He can tell us which one it is, but it'll end the same way. Anyway,
true.
So he goes on to talk about green technologies, green premiums. This is a huge focus of the book. And he talks about how green technologies can be used to fight climate change, and they're being improved all the time. And we will invent new ones as well, and there will constantly be new technology that can be used to fight climate change. All of this is fucking gibberish, right? And is the classic liberal technocrat spiel, right? And a little clarification: technocrat refers to areas of expertise and believing that people with expertise should rule the world. It doesn't actually mean technology. Right. It's like it's the same root of the word. But like, it's this belief that if we just innovate enough, we'll innovate our way out of climate change. And the parts of his book that are really fucking insidious, that he, again, either doesn't know or he is that much of an insidious creep and he can choose, are where he's talking about like the effect on the world. So he talks about like the poorest people in the world who are farmers. Factually, those are the poorest people in the world. Should just tell you something about how fucked our economy is, that the people who feed us are the poorest people in the world.
Yeah, it's horrific. Absolutely horrific.
So he gives like a few different examples, and two of them that I remember about these farmers. One of these this family in India, and they're hit by a drought, and the infrastructure that should supply water to their land to fight this drought, it's like a tiny trickle as all comes out of the pipe, instead of enough water to help, and that's clearly fucked, right? And the implication that Bill Gates does not explain, right, because then he would be lying. The implication he leaves the reader to take is that water is scarce.
Oh my fucking god.
Right, which is something that we have a little bit of familiarity with, because of this idea of the water wars, because of this idea of water insecurity is a genuine issue that exists in the world. And as with everything in Bill Gates's book, it has way more to do with how the economy is managed
Yeah.
than to do with how much of the thing there is.
Just quick,
right?
what's his book called?
It's called How to Avoid a Climate Catastrophe.
Okay, yeah. Just bring that up on the stream.
So he's there outlining this hypothetical but very real example of an Indian family who experience a drought, and they can't do anything about this stuff because the water that's sent to them by the state is just not enough.
Yeah.
Now, India is a really interesting example for him to pick, because in India, poorer neighborhoods are charged like 10 fucking times more for the same amount of water than rich neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Like it's such a fucking perfect example of a state where neoliberal capitalism has removed people's access to one of the most basic things. I mean, human beings are what? Like whatever percent water, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's one of the most
A
basic possible things that you can need. And it's been removed. People's basic access has been removed because like the market responds to different like availability and how much money people have by making people more desperate on purpose.
Yeah, that's right.
The trickle coming out of that pipe, the fact that that infrastructure hasn't been repaired or wasn't there in the first place, the fact that they can't afford it, the fact that the water that they're getting for free is just a tiny little trickle, all of these are effects of neoliberal capitalism.
Yeah.
But Bill Gates wants us to infer the conclusion that it's a water scarcity problem.
Yeah.
It isn't.
Okay.
Round 2, he also talks about an Appalachian farmer, right? He tells this absolute sob story of this hypothetical Appalachian farmer who they're... So what happens to their land is it floods.
Right.
Now, first of all, you got waterlogged land, you can't grow anything on it.
Yeah.
Second of all of the transport networks in the whole state are fucking out, right? So even the crops that you do have stored up in your silos, you can't move them anywhere. And they got wet and they're starting to rot and the power's out and you can't fix it, right? So all your store crops, they're gone. All of your ability to survive, it's gone. You can't even get your cattle to market, right? To just sell them off to try and mitigate the damage. The damage that a flood in Appalachia would have on this hypothetical but very real American farmer is fucking enormous. Now, Bill then talks about how this land, which is, you're situated as the farmer in this, because Bill doesn't situate himself as the farmer, funnily enough.
Right.
You're the farmer, right? And it's been your family's land for generations. But now you have to sell it off just to survive. And isn't that tragic?
Horrific. Oh my goodness.
NBs, ladies, gentlemen, aren't we all just weeping into our pie at this tragic story, right? And it's really fucking sad. But here's the reason that you sell it to someone who would buy the land, right? We're thinking of who's going to buy it? Fucking Aquaman? No. No, but keep that question in mind, who's going to buy it? Because... someone who buys land off a farmer who can no longer afford to make money off it is someone who owns a lot of land.
Yeah.
Because the reason they do that is that different areas will flood at different times. And if they own all the land, as opposed to you who just own your family's old land, right? They can just grow different stuff in different places and avoid the floods, right? And they can control it. Now, if farmers got together into a cooperative or any other kind of community economy, some kind of commune economy. There's something, there's a word for it. Anyway, if they did something like that, they could manage this really easily. Just like the big landowner who would buy up the land. And the thing about Bill Gates' example is that he, again, leaves us to infer that the farmer is going to move away to the city and seek labor there. That's not the case. That farmer is going to have to work on the same land that their family's owned for generations, only giving all the profits over to the guy who bought the land. And here's the kicker, right? Who is the largest agricultural landowner in the United States?
Oh, man. Nestle? No. No. Pass. Don't know.
Bill Gates.
Right. Okay. Well.
So if he fucking cared about this farmer who's telling us this sob story about, right, then he could. All the guys are there. All the farmers are there working for him right fucking now on the land that he sniped off them.
Yeah.
Right.
Holy
after
shit.
disasters hit them,
So
and he could literally just give it back to them and let them work as a cooperative.
Yeah.
Right. And instead, he is profiting off it while trying to tell us that that's such a sub story.
I thought Bill Gates was just the computer guy. What's he doing owning all this land? What's that all about? What's he doing with all this land? Is he making?
Well,
is he growing more computers?
It's vital infrastructure, and so it receives enormous subsidies from the state.
Yeah.
Especially corn in America receives absolutely ridiculous subsidies from the state.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's a great place to invest your money.
Yeah.
Infrastructure. If there is a market in something that people absolutely need, that's a great place to invest your money.
Yeah.
Think about, and think about Lex Luthor from the first Superman film. Now, you might think it's a little uncharitable of me to compare Bill Gates to Lex Luthor.
Yeah. I'm neutral on the matter, by the way. Don't care either which way.
Oh, well. So, Lex Luthor's plan in the first fucking Superman film is to detonate the whole, the whole East Coast, and he's bought all this land that's further in from the coast, right, dirt cheap, and it will become seafront properties when he destroys all the land and sinks it into the sea. And he tells Superman, when he's monologuing his whole speech, that his father told him, right, people will always need a place to live, so it's a great investment. And the film is like, that's fucking evil. The film is telling us, right, that's a fucking evil piece of shit, the worst person we can imagine, right? They tried to come up with the worst guy they could imagine, right?
Yeah.
Anyway,
so
vital infrastructure, really good place to invest your money if it's open to markets. Neoliberalism will always try to open everything up to markets, especially, if it will profit America.
I don't know if you're going to go into this or not, but this is just something that I've had in terms of exposure to this, and I was going on about this. And 9 times out of 10, when I talk about something like this, it's, there's not an amazing amount of people here, and, no one sees it, but I turn out to be right. So I just want to ask you your thoughts on this. So Joe Biden was at the G7 meeting last year or whenever it was, or earlier this year. I can't remember exactly when.
Sure.
Giving it the big legs about, and I think someone in chat said it before, giving it big legs about infrastructure, using a lot of words about infrastructure, and also talking about Africa and China's infrastructure in Africa and stuff like this. And, sort of framing it as this idea that we need to help the people of Africa. The country Africa. We need to help the people of the country Africa to
very cool,
to put in these bits of infrastructure in order to. Was it June? That's how fucked my frame of time is. Sorry. Anyway. So he was going on about this, and in my head I was thinking, this is a really good way to sort of manufacture consent into invading Africa. And just twatting a bunch of resources out of Africa, in a sort of way of being we're just doing this to protect them from China's bad non-free market capitalism, right? Does that hit any nails on the head, or have I fucked that up completely?
So the way that America invades places isn't with boots on the ground.
No.
Unless boots on the ground will make them money.
Yeah.
In Afghanistan, the vast majority of all US spending, it wasn't on building schools. No. It wasn't on retarmacking roads.
Yeah.
It went straight to Blackwater, the military contractor.
Correct, yeah.
Right? It went from, what was it? When we in America invaded in 2000, it was in 2001, it was 1 in 24, something like that. Was 1 in 24 troops was a mercenary hired by Blackwater rather than one of our army.
Mm-hmm.
By now, it's 1 in 4, 1 in 5.
Yeah.
It's almost right, and it just expands and expands.
Mm-hmm.
America, when they're talking about infrastructure in Africa, right? Now, the possibility of military conflict, it's not impossible, right?
Mhm.
But the main, in fact, there will almost definitely be some kind of fucking conflict going on, right?
Yeah.
But the main thing that he's talking about when he's talking about infrastructure in Africa is opening markets.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Like the thing with Japan, with China, all this, right? Is just like these are places where America isn't making money off something.
Yeah.
And from America's point of view, that's not freedom.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's literally the American ideology.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, it may or may not involve a military presence,
Sure.
but it will absolutely
Well, that's I guess that's like you could call it. It is. I guess woke imperialism all around. Like one of the things I know that I said to you, maybe we should chat a bit about Afghanistan, and I probably wasn't clear. But in terms of Afghanistan, what I actually wanted to talk about was the fact that they're talking about, the media are talking about now, like all these precious minerals in Afghanistan that we now don't have.
Yeah.
That could be good for the environment. All of a sudden it's like.
It's fucking ridiculous.
Yeah, neoliberalism is like fighting against itself because on one hand they're like, oh, let's pull the troops out. But I guess that's also kind of fucked as well because that's what Trump did. Like Trump signed the retreat in Afghanistan with the Taliban, right?
Right.
And now, all the Republicans are like, oh, woke Joe Biden.
We can absolutely talk about Afghanistan in that regard in a minute.
Yeah.
Because because like there's two sides to that, right?
Yeah.
So like the two sides of media about Afghanistan right now, mainstream media anyway, are feminism and environmentalism.
Oh yeah.
Like those are the two things they want to talk about.
Yeah.
All these minerals exist that could help us fight climate change, and the Taliban are being so terrible to women, so terrible to queer people.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like both of these things are true. And that's what's so fucking tricky about it, right? It's like this is what's so fucking tricky about news media is that it's about how they show you the truth.
Yes.
It's not about just outright lying in most cases.
Yeah.
But yeah. Again about China.
Sorry to digress. That seems to be like sort of a connection in that maybe there's going to be maybe that's the reason for the military removal. I don't know. Maybe Lockheed Martin and stuff like that. Maybe now they're putting money into developing infrastructure instead. You know what I mean? In terms of like,
well, while the like markets remain open, they can make money off it, but it's not like they give a fuck.
No, for sure. Yeah, this is just I'm just spitballing here.
Yeah.
In terms of like, I just feel like it's connected and it's all kind of connected in that regard.
Okay, let me wrap up this thing and we'll talk about Afghanistan in a second. So basically, right. Hang on. First tangent we were on was Africa.
Yeah.
And in Africa, there is an ongoing thing from China, which is called the Belt and Road Initiative. This has been going on for multiple decades now, and people should know about it.
Yeah.
Especially if people are going to get into arguments online about MLs versus anarchists and about whether China is good or not, right? So China is practicing state capitalism, very much so. It has these huge companies that literally belong to the state, and the money goes to the state at the top of it rather than to, right, like, but at the same time, there are people making a lot of money off it. China has more billionaires than anywhere else. Mm-hmm. So Chinese imperialism, and that is a fucking thing, and people don't, like, some leftists get very haughty about that because their thing is that China is good because it's not American imperialism and it challenges American imperialism. So mentioning that China also has imperialist aspirations and is currently in the process of doing extremely imperialist stuff, right, can be troublesome for them. But the Belt and Road Initiative is exactly what we're talking about, investing in other countries' infrastructure because it's a vital thing that if you control it, right, if you're the ones who control it, if China literally owns the highways that run through, like run across, like run intercontinental, like just like completely span Africa, and like they're the main trade routes, and like if China literally just owns that land because they bought that land and they own those roads, they can control who goes on them.
Yeah, I
right?
actually,
They can literally control it.
I funnily enough had a conversation with I went to a trans rights protest last year, and there was some representatives from the Revolutionary Communist Party in I don't know if they're based in Manchester or all over the UK. Different from the Communist Party in the UK because they're not transphobic, which is a start. But they,
give them time.
yeah, it'll happen. But well, I'll tell you why it'll probably happen.
It's a party in the UK, so it'll probably happen.
I actually had one of the guys from that on the stream, but we didn't speak specifically about this. But they were in the process of trying to, and it was so funny because, you know, bless them, like, you know, I think they're just trying to do the good thing. But, you know, as soon as I started like saying to them, like, listen, you know, I am a Marxist-Leninist, but I'm also an anarchist, and I don't believe in, you know, China going to different countries and, you know, doing shit like installing infrastructure, shit like that. They were desperate to tell me that was not imperialism. They were desperate to tell me that, no, you see, China is helping these countries.
It's like, where have you fucking heard that before?
I know.
Fucking heard that? Oh, Jesus Christ.
It's so silly.
Fucking unreal.
Sorry,
right.
I just had to put that in there.
No, that's fab.
This is
that's
legit a thing that happens.
Honestly,
not just online, but in real life.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
I mean, there tends to be a thing, I think, where people think that, like, so this is a very Western perspective. We get fed a whole bunch of fucking guff about freedom.
Yeah.
Right? And we can talk about freedom because that's a really fucking interesting concept. Mm-hmm. But, like, we get fed all this guff where, like, freedom is the most important buzzword.
Right.
And to people in the global South or people, or like, leftists in China or whatever, like, it's not about that. It's about, like, projects that are going on, and they have a much more like community focused and like united motion idea of the world. And like the basic idea of like individual liberty is not something that's like used in kind of the ideological propaganda the way it is here. And so a lot of the people who wind up being leftists in the West wind up being anarchists almost by default, because they're just like, I am a leftist. I believe in communism. I believe in a society that helps people, not
capital.
Yeah, not capital.
Yeah.
But I care about freedom, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And that's like, it's just like, well, I mean, have you thought about why you care about freedom and what it actually means to you, and, and where you got those ideas from and stuff like this? And like, plenty of anarchists have. I'm an anarchist. I'm not just here to shit on anarchists.
Oh, but that's
I'm
the
just
best
saying
bit. That's the best bit.
That there is a tendency, right, for Western leftists to become anarchists because of a total marriage to the concept of freedom that was handed to them by the most oppressive, most authoritarian fucking imperialist nations on the planet.
Yeah.
And then people tend to fucking read Lenin, and then they're like, oh, fuck, I'm a Marxist-Leninist now, because, like, actually Lenin's pretty good. And so that's, like, a trajectory that happens for a lot of, like, Western MLs.
Yes, true, yeah.
And then what I've noticed is, like, a lot of MLs who just have the assumption that, like, if someone's an anarchist, they've just never read Lenin. Like, they've just never read, like, sat down and fucking read Lenin. And it's kind of like, you know, hard for them to conceive of this idea of someone who's read Kropotkin and Lenin and thinks they've both got some points.
Yes.
Right? Or whatever.
Yeah. Nuance is important, folks.
Right. Anyway. For my part, I believe that Marxist-Leninism and anarchism are both vital structures, differently shaped structures of leftism that will help to bring about world communism.
Yeah.
Right. And that it is actually, in some senses, better for people who are inside the imperial core to be anarchists because of what that can mean about challenging the state. But that's maybe, again, for another time.
Yeah, for
right?
sure.
Yeah. But so, back on Bill Gates, right? So he tells these sob stories. He's trying to get you on side for why we need to develop these technologies. And he doesn't just say about we need to develop these technologies. He keeps on talking about green premiums. And what he means by that is the amount of money that it costs to implement new technologies that can help to fight climate change. And he's on and on about the point that poorer nations won't be able to afford the technologies to fight climate change. And that's what's holding them back.
Right.
So, pretty fucking interesting definitional, like, just basic assumption, right? That the relationship will always be richer countries selling, or someone selling this technology to everyone, and the richer countries can afford it and the poorer countries can't.
Yeah.
And it's like, actually, we're facing a fucking emergency, and everyone should, like, if a country is too poor to afford that technology, then why the fuck would you not just give it to them?
Yes.
But instead, right, this is a method for a new green imperialism, right?
Mm-hmm.
And again, just like with eco-fascism, this is just a thing that's happening now. We shouldn't talk about it like it's on the horizon.
No.
It's already starting to tick, right?
Yeah.
And the reason I say that this is like apparent to anyone with like 5 seconds of thought is that historically, imperialism has always been post hoc rationalized with morality.
Yes.
The first wave of British imperialism was about was post hoc rationalized about delivering Christianity to uncivilized nations. We think that was the whole of British imperialism. It wasn't. It was just the start of it.
Yeah.
Right? In fact, the material reason was that like markets in capitalism have to infinitely expand. And so when they infinitely expand beyond their own nation, they have to go somewhere. You need to make more money. This, by the way, is why infinite growth is such a fucking problem.
Yeah. And that's also why slavery was such a big thing.
Yes,
like
exactly.
The British monarchy literally just like were slave sort of sellers. Like that was the biggest thing.
Literally trading in. Absolutely. And also
at the start of the empire,
right, the other thing slavery does is get a whole population of people and moves them off their land.
Yes.
So that land is then open to use and profit by colonial powers.
Yeah. Plus the profit you get from no wage laborers, basically. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So it's like if you fucking go into Africa and you enslave everyone in sight, and like half of them you get them to work there where you've taken the land off them, half of them you send to somewhere else to work over there and also makes you profit. Right. Yeah. This is the basic shape of imperialism. But the post hoc justification is we're making them into Christians.
Yes. They're savages.
So you take like just enough of them home to the imperial core, and usually as slaves and servants, but sometimes literally just to show off to people. Just like, look, we taught him English and also to love Jesus, and that's a good thing for some reason, right? And as religion's hold on the world has lessened in the centuries since, right, that rationalization's worn thin.
Yeah.
And as that rationalization wore thin, people started to point to slavery and be like, that's really fucked up what you did.
Yeah.
So the second wave or the more recent wave of British imperialism was to end slavery. And so Britain fucking reinvaded the entire world on the justification that they were going to end slavery there.
Yeah. Right. Okay. This is something I didn't know.
That's the thing that people fucking need to know.
When they reinvaded it, what in what context? What happened? Like
you're talking about some places. You're talking about some places where there were corporate or like capitalist slave owners in a place that wasn't currently ruled by Britain.
Right.
Places that formerly were a different colonial powers thing.
Makes sense.
And some of the like big. The big ones were like crusades into the fucking Middle East, where like some Asian countries had started to grow in power and were like using slavery, and Britain was like, no, we're going to conquer their colonies, we're going to conquer them, we're going to conquer the entire lot to end their wrong, immoral practices. Yeah. Right.
And also conveniently earn a lot of dough.
Conveniently, right? Exactly. Yeah. I mean, this is a thing. Like, the Opium Wars with China. Yeah. Like, the shape of history is absolutely the shape of trade and more specifically debt, right? Yeah. Because it's not even just about doing trade with people who can afford to buy the stuff you're selling, but it's like forcing them to buy the stuff even when they can't.
Yes.
So this is a thing that's common between China with the Opium Wars in the past and America today. Mm-hmm. So China didn't fucking want opium.
No, for sure.
Right? Yeah. Or didn't want to be in this trade, and the reason that fucking Britain was at war with them to force them to trade with us. Same thing today, where America talks a whole fucking a whole fucking game about foreign aid and how America gives more foreign aid to anywhere else in the world, than anyone else in the world, right? And a whole ton of that is corn, American corn, which is subsidized by the American state, right? Because the farmers need to be able to earn just enough to fucking stay alive, right? And in order to do that, they need to sell their crops somewhere, and there's way more corn than they could possibly sell and give to the rest of America. So America puts it overseas, right? And loads of countries don't want that fucking corn because crops like that, right? If it's in that massive a supply, it completely crashes their economy, and their farmers can't make any money selling it because basic economics, right? But when countries try to refuse American foreign aid, they have a habit of finding themselves invaded.
Yes, right.
This is one of the things where during the last administration, the CIA had a massive morale crisis. Like their recruitment was way down, their quitting was way up, right? And literally the reason is that Trump doesn't understand American imperialism one fucking jot, like not even the slightest bit. So he was talking all about like they all owe us money, we give all this aid, all our troops are in Afghanistan, like all this shit, right? And he was saying these are places where America is spending too much money. And he had no concept that this is how America owns the world.
That's how they make it.
It's literally how America rules the fucking world is through troops in Afghanistan, aid to foreign nations, and trading at a deficit. When we talk about trade deficit, right, what that means is other countries owe America money. From Trump's perspective, when he's trying to be like a smart, canny businessman, and he's being like, they owe us money, so we just shouldn't trade with them until they pay it all back. It's like, no, you fucking this was why the CIA ended up all demoralized, because their basic trade is forcing other countries into debt to America so that they're part of the American empire. And he's like, right.
Yeah, for sure.
Anyway,
so I just want to question about that. Do you think that really he doesn't know, or because to me, so Trump signed the retreat for? I know it's a ridiculous question, but I'm always convinced that he's not as stupid as he makes himself out to be. I'm absolutely convinced of it. He's definitely not good at business. I know that. But if you're the POTUS, you're gonna have a bunch of people actually telling you what's what, and he can't be that stupid. I know he sacked a bunch of people, but here's my here's my take on it. So when did he sign the retreat? It actually all hinges on this, so let me just find this out if I don't know, if you don't know. When did he sign the retreat for Afghanistan with the Taliban? Right, because if that is sort of late into his presidency, and then he knew he was gonna fuck it up, because I don't think Trump thought he was gonna win a second term. I don't think he knew that.
He didn't want to win the first time.
Right, sure. He just fucked around, and America.
He wanted to run and lose so that he could start his own media network.
Right. Okay. All right. So there you go. So here's the thing. I think he knew he wasn't going to win despite everything, and I think that, but maybe he led this on into this being Biden's fault. Because now Biden's going to have to try and re-justify some kind of intervention. Maybe not in Afghanistan. Maybe, like he was talking about the G7 stuff in Africa, different countries in Africa. Maybe that's what it is. I don't know. Maybe Trump did that as a political move. Could be wrong, but I don't know. Food for thought, maybe. But I think you're right. I think he's stupid in a lot of senses.
Like interesting possibilities for sure.
Yeah, let me just try and find this out. Anyway, sorry to digress. Carry on.
Speaking of Biden and interventionism, one of the reasons that Biden is in some respects literally more dangerous than Trump is that the Democrats are like currently poised to be way, and Biden specifically, like poised to be way more likely to start a war than Trump.
Yeah.
Trump is all about American isolationism and not spending money on shit. Yeah. I mean, he's not really, but like that's his spiel. Mm-hmm. But a thing about war is that no American president who's ever started a war has lost re-election ever.
Right.
And this is just a generally true thing. Like people under wartime don't vote for a new guy because they want to see if the old guy, like, because they assume the previous guy can handle the situation he created, right? It's a very like basic political concept. It's why Boris had such huge numbers because of Brexit. And like, if you think about it, if you think about it, the Democrats who are in right now, Biden who's in right now, who has talked so much about the threat of Trump and the threat of the GOP, right? Way more likely to fucking start a war knowing that it will definitely win him re-election,
of course,
on that like moral justification. And if he can find a moral justification for starting a war too, he'll fucking take it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I was thinking. Yeah, because that as soon as Biden got into power, I was thinking like, okay, this dude was super inflammatory during the Obama years. Do you know what I mean? He was almost like the mouth of Sauron for Obama's like, imperialism kind of thing. So yeah, absolutely agree with you on that 100%. So anyway, sorry to digress again.
Apparently it's February 2020.
Yeah, so this is what I was thinking, and I think it's like Lorcan says in the chat, salt the earth behind him, and that was my thing. Anyway, I wasn't saying you were wrong.
No, I think that's exactly it. Absolutely.
Yeah. So back to what you were saying about totally forgot now. That's entirely my fault.
Well, to wrap up on Bill Gates,
yes.
Point is, like, he's advocating this explicit plan where the countries in the global north will sell green technologies to the global south.
Yes,
he's advocating green imperialism.
Yeah.
He's just saying, it's like, we talk about the quiet part loud because we're used to fascists who like literally lie about their beliefs. But the way that neoliberals fucking hide their beliefs is they make them really boring.
Yeah.
This is also the reason that we've had so much trouble on the fucking online left building populism around like tackling liberalism.
Yes.
Because the ways that liberalism works, because it's the status quo, because it's the real politique, because it's all this shit, like, it's so fucking boring. And when politics is boring, they can do anything they want and get away with it.
Yeah.
Because no one wants to like spend the time learning about it. This is why it's so fucking important to learn about how liberalism functions and how neoliberalism functions, because they want to keep it away from you. They want to make it seem obfuscated and tedious so that you won't challenge it. And I mean, Bill Gates talking about green premiums and all this shit seems just really tedious, but actually it means keeping the world under America's thumb for the next 100 years.
Absolutely. I've had a big sort of agreement with you on that for a long time. And we actually spoke about it last time, about how politics is very inaccessible for the majority of people in order to keep them, like you say, disinterested. Yeah, absolutely.
That's the main thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. So that takes us up to let me just see what I've sent you in the notes here.
Yeah. Sorry, do you mind awfully if I just have a quick toilet break? Is that all right?
No, not at all. Go for it.
I'm needing a wee for a while. You can still talk to the chat while I'm
I'll
gone.
field questions. Anyone who has questions in chat, hit me up.
Yeah, let's go. I won't be too long. Back in a sec.
Right. How we all doing? Machiavelli was right again. Yeah, making things boring is the most important thing. People don't challenge you when your politics are fucking boring as hell. Comrade Trump. So it's like, that's the thing, right? It's like, it's completely understandable why the people of America should and always were going to vote Trump out after his first term, because the guy was a fucking shit show domestically and had all these fucking Nazis marching in the street, and then he even ended up like nearly having a coup because he was like he riled up these fascists so much. But like by contrast, Biden, it's like American imperialism is a fucking disaster for the planet. There is no difference between neoliberalism and American imperialism. They are the same thing. They are just different angles on the same thing. There is no difference between capitalism and climate change. They are just different angles on the same thing. To end one, you must end the other. So like, neoliberal capitalism, American imperialism, and fucking climate change are absolutely the same fucking thing. And like, if we're going to talk about green imperialism, like, Biden is this is doing this completely predictable thing of using the crisis capitalism has created to sell more American imperialism. So, like, I was already talking earlier about how we're definitely going to have Dan Crenshaw, Chelsea Clinton presidential race where, you know, and not those specific people. I'm just picking random people, but like where the GOP candidate is a massive fascist and is explicitly saying that the GOP candidate is explicitly saying that like transgenders need to be, you know, conversion therapy or death sentence or whatever the fuck. Like, no limits to the fascism that will come out of that, and that climate change is because of God being angry at us, and then the liberal will be saying a bunch of boring shit, and people will vote for them to get away from the scary guy. But like, the same is already true of Trump and Biden, right? Trump was already this fucking domestic shit show, and it's obvious why everyone voted, you know, for Biden. And it's obvious, it was always obvious that they were gonna, because like no one wants fucking Nazis marching in the streets. But Biden is, so capitalism has to sell an apocalypse, right? To use up excess labor. Capitalism has two legs, right? Labor and capital. They go together to keep the whole thing moving. When there's too much capital generated by the system, they need to invest it in shiny projects people are excited about. So that's the space race, very literally. Like the billionaire space race shit is absolutely a surplus capital absorption racket. And then to absorb surplus labor, they need something that we all need to work really hard at to stop a catastrophe from happening. So the two things that they'll give you are an apocalypse and a bright future. And that's how they keep the machine moving, right? Is by we need to absorb this surplus labor. So here's a surplus capital. So here's all these shiny projects to build, and we need to absorb all this surplus labor. So here's a problem we need to work hard at. And that's Biden right now. He's going, you know, when people are talking about minerals in Afghanistan that can help with climate change, right? It's literally like there's an apocalypse that we need to tackle. And then Elon Musk is doing the other half of it, right? Here's the space race. We're going to go to Mars. And that's soaking up excess capital. Has anyone complimented you on your dress yet? No, actually. I mean, it was very rude of them. Thanks, Lorcan.
A beautiful dress.
Wouldn't be surprised with monarchy of the Clintons being on the list. Let's hope I'm wrong. Wouldn't want another Clinton. They're very obviously grooming Chelsea Clinton to run for president. That's just obvious. Whether she'll get to is out of their hands, but like it's clearly their intention. Yeah. Anyway, so this brings us all around to Climate Leviathan, a political theory of our planetary future by Jeff Mann and Joel Wainwright, which is the first note I sent you.
Let's have a look.
Right.
There we go. Oh, it's a bit big.
There's our boys. So Climate Leviathan is another way of saying green neo-imperialism.
Right.
So if we take the environmentalist perspective, instead of the economic and left theory perspective we've been taking so far, and we talk about for a second how fucking scary climate change is. This will be the scary part of the stream, folks, right? There is a tendency towards conservative estimates among climate scientists because people who have tried to tell everyone how serious it is have been pushed out of, like ridiculed by the media and pushed out of their platforms for being alarmists and fearmongers.
Yeah.
Right. So there is actually there has been a tendency for conservative estimates, right? Things are really seriously fucked and we do not have fucking time to deal with it, right? But, and we talked about this a whole bunch on last stream, that doesn't mean we're all going to die. Mm-hmm. And talking doomer shit, like we're all going to die, is absolutely just exactly what they want from us. Yeah, they want us to be depressed because then we won't fight back. We won't do anything if we're fucking depressed. So the reality of it is that our planet is going to warm up, and all the effects of the planet warming up are going to hit. One of the most catastrophic effects, as depicted a little sensationally in The Day After Tomorrow, is the collapse of the Gulf Stream. The reason The Day After Tomorrow is the way that it is that if the Gulf Stream collapses, the weather on this planet will literally not be predictable. We literally don't know what will happen if that happens. So it's just like, that's why we think of it as this like fucking apocalypse, because like it will just be fucking awful. You know, biblical flood kind of shit. But
yeah, sure.
People will survive. And people living in the richest countries in the world will survive a lot more.
Yeah.
And the richest people in those richest countries will survive a lot more than that. That's just like the basic lay of the land, just like to begin with. Like that's just literally it.
Yeah.
So like, don't talk about the world ending. That's not what's going to happen.
No.
If you talk about the world ending, then you're just like giving up, and that's what they want. We can change some things about this situation, right? In fact, one of the guys who I'm trying to remember this guy. Can't remember the guy's name, but he's one of the most accurate predictors of like what's coming up politically. He's predicted all sorts of like absolutely like huge stuff. He predicted the 2008 financial crash. He predicted like, you know, rising neo-fascism, shit like this. Musk and Bezos and the other richest dickheads on the planet got together for a summit about climate change and like asked him what to do.
Right.
And this sounds like a joke, right? This sounds like a fucking joke. But he was like, well, the thing that would most simply just deal with the problem is communism. And they were just like, nah.
Fuck that. Yeah.
Like, that sounds like a fucking joke, but like...
No. It's 100% real, yeah.
He talked them through, basically, like, you know, how they would be able to, like, buy some fucking private island or, like, or you know, a bunker somewhere to survive. And then he was also like, but the climate isn't actually that fucked, like, in that particular kind of way. We can change it if we just reshape how we're doing stuff right now. And they were like, nah. Yeah.
Yeah, what's the name of this person again?
I can't remember the future predicting guy's name, unfortunately, right now.
And it also seems to me, just going back to people who are very doom-pilled about it all, it seems to me like almost stolen valor from like actual poor countries and people who are really gonna suffer.
I think that's
from
a good way
this.
to describe it.
If you are living in like, you know, forgive me for, you know, using the, you know, neo-fascist term, the West, but if you are like in, you know, those countries, you are basically not going to suffer as much as someone in the global South.
Right, absolutely.
It's just a fact.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think stolen valor is a handy way of handy metaphor for describing it. Yeah, like it is people will seriously suffer, and yeah. Absolutely. I think that's a great way of describing it. So climate Leviathan, as I said, is another way to describe green neo-imperialism. It's called Leviathan in this book because it's such this huge thing, right?
Incomprehensibly huge thing.
Incomprehensibly huge, exactly. That's why we use the term Leviathan. But it's basically the systems that currently exist carrying on as they are, right? The systems of neoliberal capitalism carrying on as is, that's climate Leviathan. And the way that will work is the systems of global power that already exist, right? The global North exploiting the global South, only it's the justification of fighting climate change. And as collapse sets in and just like massive destruction on a planetary scale, right, the global North will have the money that it's extracted from the global South to protect against it. Yeah. And the world will, in some senses, more or less just shrink. Like, the global North will be where the majority of people fucking survive under that system. Yeah. Right? To be clear, if climate Leviathan got its way with the whole world, but we'll talk about that in a sec, right? Then that's where the majority of people would survive. And that's why I said at the start, the climate crisis is necessarily a refugee crisis, because then you'll just have all these displaced people from countries that have been fucking destroyed trying to get in. And this is why I also talk about how it's entirely possible that America, Britain, Europe, Scandinavia could become socialist or even communist countries, but like with massive border controls.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
It's entirely possible that like our governments will raise the standard of living, not even like while terrible shitty stuff is going on even in our countries, because like, you know, you can't hide from the weather. Like, they'll raise the standards of living, and then like being a citizen will be a way more like vital concept, and it's way more authoritarian, and they can do whatever they want with you at the threat of not letting you be a citizen anymore.
Yeah.
You're looking at well, I mean, funnily enough, you're looking at a nationalist sort of socialism. It would be very Starship Troopers, right?
I was thinking
you'd have to do your part for the state in return for your higher quality of living.
I was thinking
and being
about
allowed to be a
sort
citizen.
of Nazbols as well. It's very Nazbol-y.
Yeah. Well, so this is all right. So hang on. There's a quote I also sent you.
So is that the bit that you highlighted in red?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is actually from someone else's tweet, but this is a good quote.
Yeah.
So this is to do with some of the stuff I was already talking about with Bill Gates, right? The political problems we face cannot be simply fixed by delivering science to the masses. If good climate data and models were all that were needed to address climate change, we would have already seen a political response in the 1980s. Our challenge is closer to a crisis of imagination and ideology, because people do not change their conception of the world just because they're presented with new data.
True.
Right. So this is the way I think a lot of the time.
Yeah.
If you find the way I think interesting, pay attention. This is the way I think a lot of the time. There are these enormous monsters striding across the earth. Okay? And they're not Elon Musk, and they're not Jeff Bezos. They're not even Amazon or America. They are entirely in our heads. They are enormous, monstrous things that exist entirely in our imagination, but affect how we all behave. If you've seen the film Paprika, when they're all in the dream together, right? The real world doesn't change, but they're all seeing the same reality and acting in accordance with it.
Mm-hmm.
That's what a nation is, right? An imagined community. Right. We see something called Britain, like you and I, right? We something called Britain is all around us, and it's like, it's not fucking real. And it needs an imaginary thing called a border to define where it is and what it is, and a government to define like what it does and what it's capable of, and organizing the people who live on this land into, you know, another imaginary thing called a workforce in order to power the operations that it can do, right? This is the way I think about this stuff. There are these huge fucking monsters that are entirely in our heads. They are ideological monsters. If you're familiar with Richard Dawkins' meme theory, right? They are memes. They are mind organisms.
Yeah. See, like when I think of Britain at the minute, I just think of like, you know, plague turf island, basically. Do you know what I mean? And it's sort of like, I guess, and that's your angle on it.
Yeah, that's what you can see from your little niche. Yes. That's your perspective on this enormous thing, but it's literally unknowable. Mm-hmm. These things are fucking Lovecraftian, right? You just can't see the whole thing.
That's right.
But you can study the material reality that they exist within, and how they're affected by it, and how they affect it, and you can study what people's perceptions of them are, but there's no real telling what the thing is itself. You can't really talk about the thing itself. You can't really know the thing itself, but you can talk about its effects. And this is why I find climate Leviathan such a compelling term for what we're talking about, because we're talking about an ideological beast wrapping itself around the world, right?
Yeah.
So the writers of this book have 4 proposals for what the societies of the future will look like.
Mm-hmm.
And they've arranged them in a 2x2 grid. This is the third image I sent you.
Mm-hmm.
So you have planetary sovereignty or anti-planetary sovereignty, capitalist, anti-capitalist.
Yeah.
So climate Leviathan is our first one, right? We can understand American imperialism and climate Leviathan as being the same for the purposes of this quick explanation.
Mm-hmm.
The reason it's planetary sovereignty is America. It's America ruling the fucking world with neoliberalism, right? And it's capitalist, right? Those are the intersections of that.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's anti-planetary sovereignty, right? They don't care about the planet.
Yeah, they're just like, let's go to Mars, right?
Or they care about just a little bit of it and the rest can go screw.
Oh, okay, right. Yeah.
And this is climate behemoth,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the quickest way to understand climate behemoth is the Mad Max films.
Okay.
You're talking about fascists. This is where we're looking at our eco-fascists, right? This is people who are going to seize whatever chunk of the planet they can and just desperately control it and desperately try and get as many resources as they can into it, right? And then just like basically sit and wait. They have no plan for the future. They are a death cult by definition. That's what fascists are all about.
I'm with you, yeah.
This is why, Trump's, again, if we're comparing Biden and Trump, right? Trump is an isolationist. He wanted to build the wall. He wanted to bring the troops back, all of this stuff. Mm-hmm. And it's because, stuff is getting scarier, collapse is imminent, all this shit.
Sure.
For America, at least. Like, Europe is in a slightly different situation, but it's complicated. And what Trump and other fascists want to do is just seize their bit and then just scrabble as many resources in as they can.
Of course,
right?
Yeah.
And it's like, it's not got as clear an organization because it isn't a plan for the future. It's literally just like, get what we can and just wait. But they will all fucking kill each other.
Yeah.
Right? But again, we always need to be turning away from the doomer pill every time.
Yeah.
When I talk about they will all kill each other, I don't mean literally if a climate behemoth society forms in America or somewhere else in the world, right, in response to climate change, that everyone inside of it will die. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that that society will collapse again because they don't have a plan for the future.
For sure.
The difference is, right, with climate Leviathan, it has a plan for the future, and that's in a sense much scarier.
Mm-hmm.
Because it has a plan on how to keep going. It has specifics. It has details figured out.
Yeah.
Right. Then we have planetary sovereignty and anti-capitalist.
Yeah.
This is referred to in the book as climate Mao. And the reason is that if we study the way that China is responding to climate change, they have a cohesive plan for the future.
Yeah.
And but it only works if China takes over the world.
Okay, right, okay.
So that's why it's planetary sovereignty, right?
Right.
It only, their plan for the future only works if China rules the whole world.
I'm with
you. They've got things they're doing currently, right? And honestly, the Belt and Road Initiative, parts of their imperialism are green right now. They are making this positive impact, exactly like these guys told you in real life. They're making this positive impact to change things. But conveniently enough, they're also buying up that land and it belongs to them.
Yes.
Now, there's some weird things, right? We could debate this, whether this is basically an okay vision of the future.
Sure.
If China wasn't so fucking racist, if China accepted trans people, right? Then and so on, all this kind of social progressivism. If this stuff were the case, then there's a way around where I could be like, yeah, we
this wouldn't be too bad. Yeah,
it wouldn't be too I mean, they have a plan for stopping it, right? But it is an authoritarian plan.
Mm-hmm.
How exactly is climate Mao non-capitalist? Because it's antithetical to neoliberal capitalism. It's a slightly messy definition, right? But the idea that they're describing in that in the situation for climate Mao, right, necessarily isn't capitalist, because even state capitalism requires infinite growth, right? So the ideological plan for MLMs, Marxist-Leninist Maoists, is that China is accumulating wealth through capitalism, and then we'll progress from capitalism to the dictatorship of the proletariat, then lower phase, and then upper phase communism, as Marx described in his original writings.
Can't wait.
Right.
Can't wait till they do that.
There's
how many Muslims do they have to murder to do this?
Right. Marx did say, and this is the thing you'll hear from conservatives as well, trying to like own communists, right?
Right.
Like Marx did see capitalism as a necessary step in human evolution.
Yeah.
This is another way where anarchists diverge from Marxists, because it's like, I do not think that's true.
Yeah, me neither. Yeah.
Right. But if you read it the other way and you're like, instead, there is a progression path from capitalism to communism, that's fine. That is also true. And that's what Marxist-Leninist Maoists propose. And the reason for that is that capitalism requires infinite growth, so capitalism necessarily can't, control the planet, because it'll kill the planet. I mean, it is. Look at it's doing it right now. So the reason it's called Climate Mao is that China would rule the world and convert the global economy to communism, because that is an economy that can exist in a stationary state.
Yes.
Not expanding, and therefore not doing climate change. Right. So finally, we have Climate X.
Mm-hmm.
Climate X is labeled as anti-planetary sovereignty because it doesn't require domination of the world.
Yeah, this is the cool one, right? This is the cool.
I mean, essentially, right?
Yeah.
This is kind of where we're getting to. But the thing is that Climate X is also a massive unknown.
Sure.
We don't actually have as clear a model for Climate X as we have for the others. But the really quick way to understand these four is neoliberal capitalism, fascism, MLism, and anarchism. That's just the sloppy way to understand.
It's like a different, it's a differently ordered political compass, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, that's what I was going to actually say.
Yeah.
I brought you this image because this is the political compass we're going to need for the next 50 years.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
The right-left authoritarian libertarian thing is junk.
Mm-hmm.
And it has been for a long time, pretty much since its inception.
Yeah.
But actually, if you want to understand people's politics in a way that's actually affecting the real world from now on, this is the political compass you want.
Fuck yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And because I've always been a big fucking critic of that, because for me it's not as simple as left wing, right wing. It's whether you stand for, people or profit or violence, and there's so many different. You can't simplify something like that, and it sucks because again, that's when we're coming back to this idea that AJ said it in the chat before, oh, have you and DJ always been this clever and stuff? And it's like, well, maybe we've had access to different sort of educational standards. I don't know, in terms of how we're able to understand this stuff. Maybe I've just smoked a lot of weed and had too much time on my hands, which is probably the right answer.
I mean, frankly, a lot of my thoughts did come from one evening when I was particularly fucked up.
Yeah, and again, we could talk about that on another stream if you wanted, about the, the fact that these mind-enhancing substances are illegal and stuff for that same reason. But anyway,
we should totally do that.
Yes, I think we totally should. But anyway, getting back to it, it's not going to be as simple as that. You do have to remember that a lot of these things are shrouded by the media, shrouded by neoliberal politics and stuff like that, in order to make you confused, in order to make it hard for you to understand. So don't feel like you're not clever, because it's not about you not being clever. It's just about them being very good at making you think you're not clever.
Yeah, here's the thing, honestly. I said this to my mum, and she's an academic. She's really fucking smart. But she also is a liberal, and she does also think that the kind of way of the world is smart liberals versus dumb Tories.
Right. Yeah.
And she doesn't see her own role, or it's not even her role because she's just one person and she's not in the fucking government. But the role of her ideology that she subscribes to in the destruction of the planet, she doesn't really see that. And I said this to her when she was talking about Brexit voters, I think, it's possible I mentioned this before, but like my partner's dad, right?
Yeah.
When I came out as trans, he banned me from going to see their family.
Yeah.
Right. I haven't been to their family home and to my partner's family and seen them since I came out because he's just a massive transphobe.
Yeah.
And I was talking a bit to my mum about him and like folks like him and Brexit voters and this. And I said, you think that they are people who have the same set of information as you and are stupid, so they've come to the wrong conclusion. They're not.
No.
They're people who have a fundamentally different set of information to you.
That's it. They 100%.
Just like a fucking like you can think that like medieval peasants in Europe in the Middle Ages were stupid, but like they were raised in a society that told them that like the word of God was the be all and end all, and that was literally all that existed. And to maintain that society, they had to purge all the pagans, all the Jews, all of the people who deviated from that religion, right? And that's where you get the fucking witch hunts from, was trying to maintain the material economic system, right? The witch hunts were literally a precursor, or like not even precursor, but like early stage authoritarian measure to protect capitalism.
Oh, yeah, fuck yeah.
Capitalism needed to excise strong women in society in order to exist.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like believing that like medieval peasants who got all in on a witch hunt were stupid. It doesn't do, because actually those people were just raised in a society that told them utterly different information to the information that you have.
Absolutely. And also it's funny because, you know, in one sense, it's like, they had a huge lack of information back then. But now there's almost too much. So in terms of the information that people are getting, in terms of the information that people are absorbing, it's almost like, you know, if you want to go into the nitty gritty of like how to make the world a better place, how to be a communist, stuff like that, it's actually far easier to just go, do you know what? My life's kind of all right, actually. And, you know, if do you know what? Tariq, he might get a bit of shit for being brown. It's his problem. You know what I mean? It's easier for you to fall into that than to have to go, the theory of labor value. How much thread makes how many coats? And, you know, so, yeah.
Yeah, well, like, that's another thing is that the way that these great big ideological organisms that exist in the world, the way they perpetuate, not just the way they perpetuate, but the way that they refine themselves to fit better onto your face, right? They're a fucking face hugger, and they're just like obscuring everything from view, and they're controlling your entire reality. The way that they refine to get better at doing that is an evolutionary process. When a religion springs up that doesn't seem believable to people because of their material reality, it crumbles and it doesn't succeed. So a permutation of that belief system, right, it is created that is better at convincing people it's real. If you have a religion that says the sky is purple, people aren't going to buy into your religion.
Absolutely.
Right? But if for some reason you wanted to make people believe the sky is purple, and then you had a religion that was all about how someone's trying to steal your job, right? Then some number of people will start buying into that religion, and you'll successfully convince them that the sky is purple.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Again, it's like you said, and do you know what? It's funny because it does come down to simple terms at the end of the day, and it's that very simple, fundamental media control. You know, I guess if you wanted to look at it as simply as possible, you could say the media is controlled by the elite. No, we don't mean the Jews. We mean literally billionaires. Just need to clarify that. And the elite do not want us to think, you know, that a better world is possible. So they will say, here's a terrible world. It's like Sophie said right at the start of the stream and again on the last stream. Here's a terrible, terrible world where everyone wants to kill everybody. Oh my God, how horrific. But here's a less terrible world where we only want to kill some people. And, you know, everyone will be like, oh, that's obviously the right thing to do. You know what I mean? And the reason that these viewpoints are so prevalent, and you might think like, oh my God, how could anyone think in such a manner, is because, you know, again, lots of people are made to have very comfortable lives. So these ideas, you know, don't seem that bad to them because they don't suffer from
nearly it.
Yeah.
DJ, that's nearly it.
Yeah.
But here's the problem.
Yeah.
You still said elites.
Yes, yeah.
And it's not that I'm saying like someone will come and read that as anti-Semitism, or I'm so concerned about like social justice and someone might interpret it as blah, blah, blah. It's literally factually incorrect. The elites may own the means of communication.
Right. My apologies. This is the end of me and Sophie's discussion on the climate Leviathan. I can tell you for certain that the parts that are missing are incredibly cool and based and poggers and actually phenomenal. And I'm really sorry that you missed them. This is all my fault. I'm very sorry. It's essentially because I didn't know that my hard drive was going to fill up that day. I could come up with all sorts of excuses as to why I didn't know that, but you don't want to hear that. I will be uploading another chat with Sophie. The reason that I'm uploading this tonight before our first chat is because it's relevant to a stream that I did today regarding climate change and all of the stuff that we spoke about in the stream today. Most of it is covered in this discussion as well, so I just wanted to upload that and make sure that there is a record of that. But look forward to more of this. There are more Convos with Comrades coming soon with various other people. I've got more planned for the stream in the future as well. If you're interested in checking out these conversations live, you can stay on top of it by following me on Twitter. I'm at DJMule_, DJMUEL, and also on Twitch, I am simply DJMule, DJMUEL on twitch.tv. So, see you there. Thanks for watching. Take it easy. Oh, and please go make sure that you show some love to our Sophie. They are a fantastic individual, one of my good friends. And yeah, one of the most inspirational, intelligent voices on the left. Please go and show them some love on their YouTube channel, Sophie from Mars, and also their Twitch channel, which is Sophie_FRM_Mars. See you later. Take it easy.